The students started to walk around to see if there were any other options to scale the mountain, or if they could see the shelter from the edges of the mountain. "Maybe it's best if we just head back down. Going up the mountain might be more dangerous than roaming around down there," Layla said. "I agree, but also it doesn't look like Dell knows what he's doing," Vordan replied. Dell was currently just standing in the middle, looking up at the mountain to his right and down the sloped path from where they had come from. In the middle of their exploration, though, 3 clear and distinctive dings were suddenly heard. The students all turned to where the sound came from, as it indicated that a beast had been discovered by the scanner. But looking at the student whose scanner went off, it looked like there was nothing, even around him. "What did you discover?" Dell said as he walked over to the student. The student pointed at a purple blade of grass on the floor. While walking up the slope, there were patches of grass here and there. Most of the grass was green in color, but once in a while they could see some stalks of purple grass colored. Nearly all of the students decided to ignore it, as it seemed like an odd thing with nothing strange about it. But when they started getting bored in their exploration, this particular student decided to give it a scan anyway to relieve some of his boredom. But to his surprise, the scanner said he wasn't holding a plant, but a beast. When Dell snatched the scanner from the student, a dark expression appeared on his face. "An intermediate beast, this little thing? How can that be possible?" The purple shade of grass was the same size as all the other pieces of grass. It seemed impossible for there to be a beast crystal inside. The students were not actively looking at the grass around them, but now they noticed that there were a few single strands of purple grass every so often from the grasses surrounding them. A few drops of water from the sky started to land on the ground and onto the faces of the students. "Is it going to rain?" Layla asked. "That's just great. We might have to try to find some cover." But Quinn was interested in the beast. If it was another new type and he found a way to defeat it before anyone else, he would gain a large amount of EXP once again. He bent down and looked closer at the blade of grass. "Inspect. Intermediate beast. Dumping bait beast. The top of the beast's head can often seem like a blade of grass, while most of its body remained underground. The beast cannot move, but when the rain comes it will sprout from underneath." After reading the message, it started raining heavily. Just like with the boulder snails from before, it seemed that the beast was also active in the rain, and right now they were experiencing their first bit of rain since coming to the place. Quinn immediately started to look around him and noticed many of the students were looking at the purple blade of grass. There were nearly as many blades of grass as the students. In a way, it seemed that a small army of intermediate beasts was about to pop out from under the ground. Perhaps this would be even more troublesome than the advanced tier beasts. As a single raindrop fell on the purple shade of grass, it suddenly shook, and the ground started to vibrate as well. "What the hell is going on here?" Feck said. "Guys, get away from the purple grass!" Quinn shouted to his teammates. "Let's head back down the slope." As Quinn said these words, a 2-meter-tall purple plant appeared behind him. Its body was as thick as a tree, and its head was as wide as a car. On top of its head was the strand of grass that could barely be seen on top of the giant plant-like beast. "Quinn!" Layla shouted as a plant dived down. But it was too late. The large plant had swallowed Quinn. Chaos erupted on the side slope of the mountain, once the raindrops touched the top of the beast's head. It had sent them a signal informing them to rise to the surface. The beast was tall and wide, and to top it off, they were fast and nimble as well. Most of the students were still tired from the fight with the advanced tiered beast earlier. Most of their MC cells were used, and they hadn't had enough time to recover. Their instinct told them to run, seeing the beasts rising from underneath the ground. However, the beasts were too fast. As if it was a snake, the plants opened their mouths wide and sometimes consumed more than one student at a time, and one of these students was Quinn. "We have to get him out of there," Vordan shouted as he looked around at the other students. "Damn it, why isn't there someone with high-level abilities in this class?" Dell's class was considered one of the weakest classes, and they had gotten significantly weaker after Aaron had left. Vordan was hoping at one point he could come across one of the other classes and copy one of their abilities. One of the downsides to Vordan's ability was the fact that he would have to wait 24 hours before storing a new ability. At most, with the help of Rayton and Syl, he could store 3 at a time. Because of this, Vordan was cautious about whose ability he copied. Right now, it didn't seem like anyone's ability was doing well against the plants. "He's already dead. Let's just get out of here," Sia complained. "No, he's not dead," Peter replied. "I can tell." Although Sia had no clue what Peter meant by this, the others realized that there must be some type of link between the two. That could also be the explanation as to why Peter wasn't going mad right now after witnessing Quinn's death. "I'll go get him," Fex said. The others were surprised by his words. They knew Quinn and Fex weren't close enough, but obviously from Fex's words. He was genuinely concerned about Quinn. But the question was, when did the two of them become so close? But Fex could tell the seriousness of the situation. He was the only one along with Quinn who hadn't done much during the fight against the advanced tier beast, so he had plenty of energy. Fex ran and leaped up into the air, but in the blink of an eye, the plant swayed its large body to the side and struck Fex at an incredible speed, who was still in midair, slamming him back to the side of the mountain. Maybe jumping straight forward wasn't such a good idea. The pain wreaking havoc on Fex's body wasn't too bad, but he was still a little dazed. After he pulled himself together, he saw the plant coming towards him across the floor with its mouth wide open. When he finally managed to get up, the plant was already coming for him, streaking across the floor with its mouth wide open, ready to devour him. There was no panic on Fex's face, just a slight smile. "Eat me then, you piece of—" Then he was gone, swallowed by the beast plant. It lifted its whole body and raised its head, making sure that whatever it managed to consume would go straight down. The others stayed there watching the plant for a few seconds, hoping that Fex had some sort of plan. There was a lot of popular news established by media centers about some miraculous escape after being swallowed by a beast. It was reported that those people killed their way out of the beast's body, but after watching for a while and seeing no result, the situation couldn't be more obvious. "Run!" Vordan shouted. "That's all we can do. If Peter says Quinn is safe, then we just have to believe him." Vordan, along with Layla, was the first to take their advice. Layla was a little behind Vordan, so she had a head start. Seeing this, Vordan decided he didn't have time to be picky about what abilities he had. If he touched Layla, then at least he would have something to protect himself while fighting. Thinking about this, he ran faster, straight for Layla. He then reached out and grabbed her hand. "Hey, what are you doing?" Layla complained, but she quickly stopped complaining as another beast plant headed straight for the two of them. She held out her hand, hoping to slow it down a little bit. As Vordan turned, he threw one of the spirit spears, and it pierced straight through the beast's head. But it wasn't enough, and the beast was quick to retaliate, swallowing the two in an instant. "What are you doing?" Sia shouted. She too had rushed off, hoping to run away, but she quickly stopped as she noticed there were also several plants behind them. Some groups were still dealing with them, but none of them were successful. The only group that seemed to be doing well was the group led by Teacher Dell. He had taken his large shield with him and was holding it up with his back against the mountain wall. With only one possible angle of attack, Dell and a few other students were able to block most of the incoming attacks from the plants, and since the plants weren't able to move from their original position, at most, the group had to block attacks from 3 incoming plant beasts. "Let's get over there," she shouted. "It's the safest place. With my ability, we can make it." At this point, she was tugging on Peter's uniform, but he stayed there, still looking at one of the plants. "If Quinn is somewhere else, then I need to go with him," Peter replied. She shouted in anger, "If you want to die, then go die yourself." With a single step, Sia cried out. She turned around and suddenly realized that everything around her was pitch black. Then, a few seconds later, she could feel herself falling. The whole group had now been swallowed by different beet plants. Fex and Quinn, Layla and Vordan, and finally, Peter and Sia. A few of the other students had been swallowed. A few were also knocked off the side of the cliff, while the majority somehow managed to make it near Dell, even though they felt weak. With Dell mostly blocking the plant beasts, the students were able to use their attacks to fight against them. They continued fighting till the rain finally stopped. The moment the rain stopped, all the beasts went into hibernation. They returned underground and turned into beautiful stalks of purple grasses once more. Amazingly, soil started to form over the purple grasses, and in the blink of an eye, the mountain returned to its original state. It was as if nothing had happened. "Is it over?" a student asked, huffing and panting. He felt as if he would collapse from exhaustion at any moment. "I think so," Dell replied. I think these beasts reacted to the rain. They seemed to appear and disappear at the same time as the rain appeared and vanished. Luckily for us, in a place like this, the downpour might be strong, but it doesn't last for long. However, we don't know when the next downpour will be."
"What should we do now, and what about the others?" another asked.
Dell looked around, and he could see there wasn't much blood. Also, during his studies, he discovered that plant-type beasts weren't mostly carnivores. The fact that these plants probably didn't have the acid necessary to digest meat meant that the students were still probably alive. "I hate to say this, but they're probably already dead," Dell lied. "It's best if we head back down to where we were. If we carry on going upward, then there might be even more dangerous beasts." Some of the students were annoyed by Dell's suggestion. They had made this suggestion earlier and even said the same thing to Dell, informing him about the possible danger up ahead. Still, he decided to progress anyway, and now he was saying traveling upwards was a bad idea. Before heading back down the slope, a student spotted another person walking up. As they saw who it was, a huge smile appeared on their faces. "Sergeant Leo!" the student shouted. Even Dell was delighted. There wasn't much that needed to be said, as Leo agreed that he would take them back to the shelter for now. But before doing so, Leo asked the other students to investigate the area. Just as the students were about to head down the slope, Leo started to walk over to a strange object. A certain item was giving off energy, similar to that of a beast weapon. He had arrived by the wall of the mountain and picked up the cold, solid object. "Do you mind telling me what it looks like?" Leo asked Dell, who wouldn't leave his side. "It appears to be some type of metal flask, although it has some strange design on it. It looks like a beast's head with fangs. Maybe it's one of the items that the students dropped during the struggle," Dell answered. "I'm wondering, what is so important that it needs to be kept in a special type of beast equipment?" Leo thought to himself. The last thing Quinn could remember was Layla shouting his name. Then, in a blink of an eye, they were swallowed. What came afterwards was darkness. His body was continuously being swirled around, throwing him off balance, and it didn't give him a moment to balance himself, nor use any of his abilities. Everything was happening so quickly, but during the whole process, he didn't feel any pain. When he finally reached the bottom, Quinn felt his body continuously sinking. It felt like he had been dropped into a watery quagmire. He tried moving his hands, using all the strength he could muster, but it seemed ineffective. If anything, it was making him sink quicker. His legs were the first thing to pass through, and as they did, he felt a free range of motion. They weren't hitting or placed against anything, but they felt like he was in midair, kicking them back and forth. Still, he was unable to feel anything. "If the plant swallowed me and now I'm falling, doesn't that mean I'm falling into another part of the mountain or underneath the planet?" Quinn thought. The height of his fall worried him the most. His arms had now gone through the strange substance, and now only the top of his head remained. Just like with his legs, his hands were able to move freely, but now he started worrying. If Quinn was right, then once his head would fall through, his whole body would be falling. He was strong, and he had a sturdy body as a vampire, but what was he falling into? Lava? Spikes? Or into a pit of beasts? His abilities couldn't possibly save him from that. Quinn's mind madly spun as he thought about his next course of action. He activated his shadow ability and covered his body thinly. It worked and slowed down the sinking process. But this was a mere stopgap, not a solution to the problem. But of course, this stopgap should give him enough time to think. Suddenly, a voice reverberated out of nowhere. "What the hell is this?" a boy yelled as his voice echoed out. "It can't be. Is that Fex's voice?" Quinn thought. The space was narrow, and if Fex was coming from above, it meant that there was only one place where Fex could land. Bang! The force and Fex's weight struck Quinn's head and managed to push him through the last bit of strange substance. As Quinn's body floated through the air, he thought back to how the last thing he ever saw might have just been Fex's backside knocking him down as he fell to his... "That!" Quinn shouted. Looking around him, even though he was in the dark, his pupils widened enough, letting in more light. He could see nearly just as well as outside. His guess seemed right, and he was falling from the ceiling. The good news was there didn't seem to be anything below that would do much damage. The bad news was he was falling from about 20 meters in height, and the ground was coming closer to him as the seconds went by. All he could do was brace himself for impact as he curled up into a ball. At the same time, a shield of shadow was created in front of him. The shadow was the first part to touch the ground, and Quinn followed shortly. It had worked. The shadow had slowed down the momentum of his fall. Quinn went inside and fused with the shadow. "You are useful," Quinn said as he took the shadow away, but at that moment, the speed had returned, and Quinn's body was slammed into the ground as hard as he would have if he hadn't used the shadow. In his haste, Quinn had forgotten that the shadow didn't actually slow things down, but only slowed down the time while he was touching the shadow. Once he traveled through the shadow, or once it was taken away, the object would continue to travel at the speed it previously did, before passing through the shadow or being one with it. Covered in rubble from the walls of the cave, Quinn stood up and discovered that not a lot of damage was done to him. He felt sore in all sorts of places, but his body was sturdier than before. It also didn't seem like any of his bones had broken from the fall. Just then, he could see Fex falling through the sky nearly at the same spot. "Quinn, catch me!" Fex shouted, still remembering how Fex had shoved him down under here. Quinn chose not to help. If the fall didn't kill him, it wouldn't kill Fex. Fex looked around, but the walls were too far away from him, and there was nothing nearby to attach his strings to slow down the momentum of his fall. Stepping to the side at the last moment, Quinn allowed Fex to land headfirst into the same spot as him. Unlike Quinn, Fex immediately stood up after crashing, rubbing the back of his neck. "You could have at least caught me, man. What was that all about?" Fex continued to dust himself off, and then looked around the place they were currently in. They seemed to be in a large, empty cavern. Several large holes or tunnels seemed to lead to different paths. Looking above them, they saw the plant hanging from the ceiling that had swallowed them whole. When Fex started to pat himself down, he noticed something strange. "Oh no, my flask! It must have fallen out when that giant plant hit me," Fex said angrily. "Do you want the one you gave to me?" Quinn offered. After all, it was never his in the first place, and he still had his blood bank to rely on. "No, I can't," Fex replied. "I know I'm not big on rules and stuff, but that was a gift, and I can't take back gifts. Besides, my reliance on blood is a lot less than most people. It is already at that of a vampire noble. Don't worry about me." It was true that Fex never seemed to be as interested in blood as Quinn did. Even when a student would bleed slightly, Quinn would get this tingling feeling all over his body, and his eyes would naturally be drawn to the bloodied area. But Fex never felt the same way. Quinn would keep it for now, and if Fex needed it. Quinn would still be by his side anyway. Over at different sections underneath the mountain, the others were experiencing the same thing that Fex and Quinn had gone through. Layla and Vordan were both being slowly sucked down, while their faces were pressed up against each other. This is all your fault for grabbing me," Layla shouted. Vordan even felt some of the spit from her lips land on his face due to how close they were. "Did your parents never teach you how to speak without spreading spittle everywhere? And you would have been eaten anyway, so don't blame me," Vordan shouted back. As the two fell from the plant into the large cave, Layla used her ability to slow her down from falling at a fast speed. Vordan also used the same ability and achieved the same result, so they managed to get down onto the floor safely. They discovered that they were in a large cavern with several entrances, holes, and tunnels all around the cavern walls. However, there seemed to be no one else with them. "Great, looks like I'm stuck with as if there could be a worse pairing than this," Layla thought. In another section of the cavern, the last pairing was of Sia and Peter. The two of them fell through the strange substance at the same time, and as they were falling through the air, Sia noticed that Peter's expression didn't have any trace of fear. Does he have a plan on how to land safely? If not, how could he be so calm? She felt like she had no choice but to grab him. A fall from this height could be a student, and at best, it could still break a few bones. Sia didn't have any beast gear on her, and her ability would do nothing to slow the descent. Sia grabbed onto Peter's back tightly. As they got closer to the floor, she was waiting for him to reveal his ability. She still had no idea what it was. The group had asked Peter to keep it that way while in front of the teachers. Students, apart from those that knew Pio, wouldn't know, but teachers had files on every student. No, it can't be, Sia thought, and a few seconds later, Peter crashed dead into the ground. Sia was hurt, but Peter managed to break most of her fall. But as she opened her eyes and looked at her comrade next to her, she could see that all of his limbs were mangled and broken.
"What do we do now?" Layla asked.
Vordan and Layla were now stuck together in the cavern. There were multiple paths around them, but no way to tell which ones led up or down. Seeing this, Layla didn't have an idea about what to do. "Now you're speaking to me?" Vordan said. "I thought it was my fault that the two of us are here, but when it comes to finding a way out, you come to me for help." Layla stomped her foot onto the ground and took a few steps away. She wanted to storm off and head down one of the paths randomly, but only after taking a few steps, her hands started shaking and her legs started shivering. The thought of seeing beasts, like the ones they had seen so far being down here, frightened her. When she was training at Pure, their main goal wasn't facing beasts, but humans. As an agent, her tasks and training dealt with infiltration, sabotage, and a plethora of other skills. Of course, no amount of training could prepare a child for the real thing. Since coming to this school, she had seen more than she would have liked, and it was starting to take a toll on her body and mind, more so now that her friend she would often comfort had gone.
"Why are you still having a go at me?" Layla snapped.
"I told you before, you're useless. You were useless before and even more now. At least back then you were Quinn's blood bank, but right now I can fill that role, so honestly, what use is there for you?"
"Stop saying the same thing over and over again."
Layla was at breaking point and had enough. She no longer wanted to take this type of abuse from Vordan. Without thinking clearly, she lifted a nearby rock and swung it towards Vordan. It was an unexpected attack from Layla, so Vordan was late in his reactions and managed to dodge the small fist-sized rock. The rock grazed his cheek slightly. It caused a surface cut, revealing a trickle of blood. However, the first attack didn't stop there. Layla kept swinging the rocks towards Vordan. As they were hurled towards him, Vordan did the same, repelling them away using the same ability, but also making sure not to throw attacks back. She continued forward, screaming at the top of her lungs. The sound echoed through the cavern.
"Wow,"
Rayton said, laughing. "It looks like you finally broke her. I thought I was the cruel one. You know how to annoy someone when you want to. At least I just give them a beating, but this Vordan, this is just pure evil." Vordan knew Rayton was just trying to annoy him by being sarcastic. The problem was, it was working. Had Vordan gone too far? At this point, he had been trying to split Layla and Quinn apart. Still, without saying too much directly to Layla, it wasn't for him or Quinn. He was doing it for her.
"What's that noise?"
Syl said as he stood up from his usual crouched position. The screams from Layla seemed to be so loud that they even reached Syl, who would usually ignore most things. However, Vordan was too distracted deflecting the projectiles coming towards him to give Syl a reply. As Syl started walking over towards the chair, Rayton smiled and stepped to the side. "Now this will be good to see," he said. Syl placed his hand on Vordan's shoulder, who was in the chair. Now they both had access to what was going on outside. Syl could see and feel what Vordan was doing. "It looks like you need some help. Swap with me," Syl said. "Syl, I can handle it," Vordan replied carefully. "Swap with me," Syl said, his grip tightening on Vordan's shoulder. Knowing that he had no choice, Vordan reluctantly left the seat. Back outside, 4 stones were now being directed towards Vordan's body. So far he had been taking a step back, deflecting them as they came at him, but suddenly he stood there completely still. As he raised his hands, all of the stones stopped mid-air for a moment. Then, at the same time, the 4 stones were repelled away with even greater force. Layla could tell from the sound they had made when hitting the walls around him. "Why are you attacking me?" Syl asked. Layla had noticed the sudden change in Vordan's attitude. She had seen this happen a few times before. At the canteen, while they were fighting in the desert, and now again. Her sudden attacks stopped. "If you are trying to hurt me, then you are against me," Syl said as he lifted both hands and used incredible force to push Layla's body back. Right now, Syl was combining the MC points in Sia's level 4 ability along with Layla's level 2 ability. His telekinesis powers were that of a level 6. Layla couldn't stop the powerful attack. The next moment, she was flung against the wall. The back of her head swung back into a piece of rock. and her vision quickly went to black as she passed out on the floor. "The problem has been dealt with," Syl said with a smile. In another part of the cavern, 2 more students seemed to be stuck together, dealing with their problems. Sia was taken aback at the sight of Peter's legs all mangled. They were utterly broken, and it looked like part of the bone had splintered through parts of the skin. She turned her head away, unable to look at the sight any longer. "Stay here, I will go look for help," Sia said in a panic. "You know, if you didn't hold on to me, the fall wouldn't have been as bad," Peter replied in a calm voice. Sia found it strange. It seemed like Peter wasn't affected by this whole ordeal, but she couldn't bear to look at him. Instead, she started to look around the area to see if there was anything she could find. Just like the caverns, the others were stuck in. There were multiple holes and paths to choose from, not knowing which way was the out or would lead them to the surface. Sia walked up to the entrances, which were a little away from where they had landed. She wanted to see if she could hear anything coming from down the tunnels. Perhaps some would be filled by beasts, but the others had also been swallowed, and just maybe they weren't too far from them. She tilted her head, with her ear faced forward towards the entrance, seeing if she could hear the slightest sound. "I think we should go this way," a voice said, stood right behind her. Sia was startled, and out of instinct, she turned and threw her fist, hitting Peter right in the jaw, before taking a few steps to the side. It hadn't hurt Peter, but slightly moved his head to the side. A small mark could also be seen across his cheek. "Pio, but how? Your legs were all mangled just a few seconds ago." "Apologize now," Peter demanded. "What, for the punch?" Sia asked. "No way! How the hell is that my fault? You snuck up on me when I thought you couldn't move, in a dark and creepy cave with possible beasts. Anyone's reaction could have been the same." "Still, should you not apologize if you hit someone, or am I mistaken?" said Peter. "You're weird. Why did I get stuck with you? I think you should be a bit nicer to me. After all, if we run into anything down here, then we will be relying on my ability a lot more than yours." Sia still didn't know Peter's ability, but she had a guess. His watch indicated he was a level 4, and if he managed to recover from an injury like that, most likely his ability was a healing one or a regenerative one. The only thing she couldn't quite put her finger on was the healing speed. She had never met a healer or seen a regenerative ability that could allow someone to recover that fast. They would be at level 8 to do such a thing. Still, this meant it was clear his ability wasn't a combat one, while Sia's wasn't either. She was sure of her hand-to-hand combat skills over the frail Pio. As she took a step forward, hoping to head into the other side of the cave where the other entrances were, Peter suddenly blocked her path. Wasn't he at least 5 meters away? How did he get here so fast? She thought. "If you don't apologize to me, and you are going to have a problem, a serious problem." "Whatever," Sia said, as she tried to walk past Peter. At this moment, she felt something grasp around her throat. When she looked down, she could see a hand, and it was linked to Pio. "What are you doing?" Sia just managed to let out. Just then, footsteps could be heard coming from one of the tunnels. It was unclear which one, as the echo made it hard to pinpoint the sound. "Now, Pio, I don't think we should be treating our fellow students like that, do you?" the short boy said as he took a bite from one of his favorite sandwiches. As the short-haired boy entered the room, not only did Peter recognize him, but it seemed like Sia did too. For some reason, at the sight of the boy, Peter's grip around Sia's neck had loosened. At this moment, she took the opportunity and tried to knock Peter's hand away, using her full force, slamming it against Peter's forearm. But in doing so, she realized it had the same effect as moving a rock that weighed a ton. There seemed to be no effect or movement. "I think it will be best if you put her down, Pio. Annoying as she may be, it might cause us more problems in the future," Logan said as he took a final bite of his sandwich. That was the last one." At that moment, Logan didn't look like his regular self. Apart from his head that was on display, he had his full bodysuit on from the neck down. He had no idea what he would meet down there, hence he was always prepared for the worst. Still, Logan was quite popular around the school, even if he didn't know it himself. The few appearances he made on the last outing, and during the school's events every once in a while, had caught the attention of other students, including Sia. Although Sia was wondering about the connection between Logan and Pio, Right now, she just wanted to get away from Pio. Using her ability, she stabbed a spear into Peter's belly. Not just one, but 3. Due to how close she was to him, she was able to stick in multiple spears, one after the other. When the first one entered Peter's body, his movements slowed down, allowing her to put in 2 more. Once again, using all her force, she tried to whack Peter's hand away. Still, it felt like she was pounding her hand against solid rock, but this time with the help of her ability to weaken Peter. Her attack was a success. She finally managed to knock his hand away and broke free. Not knowing where to run to, she decided to head into one of the many tunnels. If another student had arrived and had no relation to the person named Pio, then maybe she would have bolted towards Logan, but seeing that the 2 of them had some type of a relationship, she didn't want to risk it. The cave was dark, and it was hard for her to see, but each of the tunnels gave off a little reflection of light. There was always the chance that the small amount of light could be radiating from a beast, or it could be a raw crystal. Because of this, as Sia ran, she also had to be careful about her footing, not being able to see where or what she was taking steps into. It was a cave, and they were deep underground. With the floors being uneven and traveling in the dark, Sia was being naturally cautious. "This is a pain. I wish I bought some type of light with me or something," Sia complained. The group did have emergency equipment and rations, such as torches and so on, but they were all with Peter. Taking another step forward, her foot seemed to be lodged between something. She quickly managed to pull it, but it had greatly slowed her down. "This is such a pain in the arse. Whatever I have to deal with, he will too," Sia thought. "Why did you run?" Logan said. 3, 2, 1. As Logan finished counting down, Peter was already in front of Sia. Somehow the difficult pathway that she had taken was easily navigated by him. There was no torch in his hand, no light source. So how did Peter manage to catch up with her so fast? Peter decided to wait until the spirit spears had disappeared before chasing Sia. Not only that, but just like Quinn, Peter also had the advantage of seeing in the dark. For him, it was as if the cave was lit up, so he had no problem deciding on the quickest path to take. When he found her, he heard Logan shouting, "Pio!" When Peter turned around, he could see Logan holding his hand out, but there was a round and strange bright green light getting larger with every second on his hand. It was Logan's hand blaster, and Peter had seen what it could do before when it was fired against Fex. Someone stronger than both, him and Quinn. Perhaps even his regeneration abilities wouldn't be able to keep up with this. "You stop running, will you?" Logan complained while looking at Sia. While the blaster was held against Peter, he decided to let the thing go. He wasn't stupid and could always find a way to get Sia later. "What are you doing down here?" Peter asked. At this point, Sia was unsure of what to do. The entrance to another tunnel wasn't too far away, but it seemed like Logan was able to control Peter just like Quinn. She still didn't understand how Peter managed to catch up to her so fast, so her only option was to stay by Logan's side. She scuttled along until she was behind Logan. Logan then tapped something on the side of his suit, which brightened up the area around him with green lights. The pieces on Logan's equipment were illuminating a small 5-meter radius around them. "I adjusted the scanner the school gave us to increase its radius. I had to power it with my beast crystals. I don't get any points for doing that, but to me, it was well worth it," said Logan. "That's when I discovered that there seemed to be a strange tunnel underground, but they didn't quite look natural, so I decided to investigate. I never thought anyone else would be down here, so it was a nice surprise to see you." "Do you know the way out?" Sia asked. Realizing from what Logan said, he should have a wide area mapped out using his scanner. "No," Logan replied. Although this was a lie. He knew they would ask to lead him out of here, but Logan had discovered something on his scanner that he had to check out before leaving. Somewhere inside the large cave, Fex and Quinn had decided to walk down one of the tunnels. While inside the tunnel, the connection between Peter seemed to be lost. It had happened ever since he went underground. Quinn thought that it might have something to do with the distance between the two at the moment, as he didn't know that Peter and the others were underground as well. Thinking that help would never arrive, they decided to just leave it up to fate and pick the tunnel with the biggest entrance. As they walked down the tunnel, they noticed that the walls were surrounded by thin blue crystals that gave off a slight glow to them. Not enough to light up the whole area, but one could follow the small light source quite easily. "What are these?" Quinn asked, looking at the small crystals. They resemble something similar to beast crystals, but Quinn thought the only way to obtain beast crystals was by beast. "I don't know," Fex replied. "I was going to ask you the same thing." But curiosity had gotten the better of him, and Quinn decided to place his hand on top of the crystal. At first, he was planning to use his inspection skill, but there was no need, since the system had automatically given him a message. "Basic tier crystal. Would you like to store it in your system?" The shock from the message was quite immense. At school, they had been taught that the beast crystals could only be obtained from beasts. This was why the human race had been sending hunting parties to slay the beasts, even though there was a chance of death. Some crystals could be used to create powerful weapons, even more powerful than their modern equipment. But right here, crystals were hanging freely on the wall around him, and it wasn't just one crystal. There seemed to be hundreds of crystals through the tunnel they had just walked. If Quinn was to think about all the other tunnels as well, there would be at least 1,000 down here. With Fex keeping an eye over his back, Quinn was unable to store it in his system. However, he did pull the crystal out and placed it in his trouser pocket for later. "It might be something important," Quinn said. Fex just shrugged his shoulders, uninterested in the small crystal, and carried on walking ahead. Finally, they reached the end of the tunnel. After exiting the tunnel, the small discovery Quinn had made was nothing compared to this. The two boys froze for a moment once they exited the tunnel. Looking at what lay in front of their eyes, they paused for a moment. Somehow it didn't feel like they were underground. "Hey, can you see what I'm seeing right now, man?" Fex asked. "If you're talking about those buildings right in front of us, then of course I can," Quinn replied. Exiting the tunnel, it seemed like they'd arrived at what looked like a type of town. They couldn't measure how large the entire place was. Buildings stretched out far and wide, and it was comparably as large as any one of the shelters they've seen before. If they were to give a rough estimate, it looked like a few thousand people could live in such an establishment. The ceiling seemed to be unreachable. Although they could see the peak, it felt like there was no way to reach it. Their gaze moved on towards the tallest building that stood in the center of the place. It was a round, tower-like structure that was tall and high, but it hardly touched the ceiling. If one wished to even touch the ceiling, they would have to build a similar-sized building and place it on top of the already existing tower. Although a town underneath a mountain was surprising to them, it didn't seem impossible. There were rumors of such shelters being built on other planets where the temperatures could reach extreme levels at different times of the year. Underground shelters were the only answer to such uninhabitable places. And so the reason why both of them were shocked was for a different reason entirely. The two of them could already observe that the design and materials used to create the buildings were different. One of the main features was the solid black material it was made from. Instead of brick, cement, or metal, it was a different kind, a special black substance that was more stable and stronger as the primary material of all the buildings. The substance was said to be just as strong as galthrium. Although the place looked abandoned and was void of people, the buildings were a different matter. The structures looked perfectly fine and hadn't deteriorated a single bit. The only semblance of the passage of time of abandonment was a layer of dust or rock-like substance from the ceiling that coated the top of everything. And finally, the design. Although the substance was strong, it wasn't as flexible and nimble as galthrium. This meant that the edges weren't smoothed out, giving a slight rocky look. After looking at the buildings, both of them concluded that the structures built in front of them were not made by humans. This was the reason why both of them were in shock. "They're Dalki structures," Quinn muttered. This was a huge discovery. The humans had only built a shelter and classified the place as an orange portal because they thought that they had discovered the planet first. There were rare cases like this when the two opponents were trying to take control of a planet at the same time. If the two groups were to meet, regardless if there was a treaty signed or not, a fight would break out until one side was annihilated. As Fex heard these words come out of Quinn's mouth, though, there was confusion on his face. What are you on about? Flex replied. These aren't Dalki structures. They're vampire structures. Hearing these words equally shocked Quinn. He was almost positive these were Dalki structures. He had seen them in his lessons and on the news time and time again. The boy is right, the system replied. These resemble the structures that were built in my time. The system didn't answer any of the questions Quinn had right now, and only confused him even more. Fex, have you ever seen Dalki structures? Quinn asked. There was one possibility, Quinn thought. Perhaps the two structures were similar, and Quinn himself was being confused. Maybe there was something that he couldn't spot. Actually, no, I'll be honest. Maybe you know more about the Dalki because you live on Earth, but we weren't taught about them. I've never seen a Dalki either, only heard them being mentioned from time to time by one of the elders. From Fex's answer, there seemed to be a couple of possibilities. The fact that the Dalki and vampires use the same material, perhaps their technologies are on par with each other, and it would make sense why their structures looked similar. The strange black substance that humans were never able to figure out how to use properly, so they stuck using galthrium over it. The other possibility was somehow the Dalki and vampires were linked together, but this seemed even more far-fetched, especially since Fex didn't even really know what a Dalki was. Well, do you know why the vampire and Dalki structures look so similar? Quinn asked, hoping to find an answer. Also, if it is a vampire structure, why did they build one here underground? They do? Well, that's strange. To be honest, I'm not the best person to ask. When it comes to vampires, I'm young. I'm sure the elders or others will know the answer to your question, or maybe even a better student. I never paid attention in class, Fex said, laughing nervously. For your second question, I don't know either. It looks like this place has been here for a while. Maybe it was one of the planets the vampires used before, moving to another. It would make sense why it was built underground in the first place as well. What about you, system? Did the Dalki exist during your time? Quinn asked in his head. The Dalki did not exist while I was still active, the system replied. Quinn made a small note in his head about how the system replied. It seemed the choice of words it had used was oddly specific, but he knew if he pressed further, the system would just give his usual resistance. There is one thing we can do, Quinn said. Why don't we check out some of the buildings? Maybe there will be something inside which will tell us if it was the Dalkis who made this or the vampires. I'm especially interested to see what they would have in that tower structure. Hey, it looks like you read my mind, Fex replied with a chuckle. The two of them walked through the strange building structures, and the more they started to walk, the more it looked like a town. There were streets with buildings lined up on both sides. If you followed the streets far enough, it would eventually lead them to one of the tunnels they had come through. Looking at the walls, it looked like several tunnels led to the town. The two of them had entered some of the first few houses, but they seemed to be void of any items whatsoever. There weren't even beds inside, but it was clear that they were normal family structures. As Quinn entered the place, he could imagine a family living here, with all the different rooms, but while looking at the place, he just wondered what happened here. They entered a few more buildings on their way, but they couldn't find anything. Eventually, they decided to no longer enter the small buildings, as it seemed to be a waste of time. If they were going to find anything, it would be in the tower structure near the middle. For the first time, as they got closer to the tower, it looked like some of the buildings had been destroyed, as if they had taken part in a battle. The top had crumbled to the ground, and some structures no longer existed. Seeing this worried Fex a little. He knew how tough the material was, and if something was able to destroy that, they needed to have some level of strength. They continued to walk down the street. They still had some distance to cover, but the tower could be seen directly in front of them. Just then, they heard a sound of growling from the sides. "Where is that sound coming from?" Quinn said. They could both hear the growling clearly, but it seemed like there were several of them, and if he was right, they were currently surrounded. "I guess it's time to call on some extra help." Fex touched his ear and pulled on his dangling earring. Suddenly, in the palm of his hand, the earring started to glow until eventually it started to change its shape, forming what looked like a cross between a bull and a bat. "Ham here at your service," the bull said excitedly as it flew in a circle. It had been a while since Fex had last used Ham, and he was starting to miss his little companion. Anybody could see Ham. He didn't have any special skills that allowed him to turn invisible or hide his presence, but he was able to transform. If the students saw a flying, bull-like creature, it would have immediately caused alarm bells to ring, and there would be a hunt for a beast inside of school. This was why Fex had also kept him hidden as an earring, but right now they were underground. It was unlikely any other students would be down here, and even if they were, it wouldn't be so strange to see a beast flying around on a beast planet. All Fex would have to do was pretend he didn't know his companion and later meet up with him again. Finally, I get to spread my wings about, Ham cheered. Quinn had so many questions he wanted to ask Fex right now. He was curious about the little beast and wondered if it had been with Fex the whole time, what it could do, and if every vampire was able to get some type of companion. The problem was, Quinn was unable to tell what was the norm with vampires and what wasn't. He could ask the system, but it wasn't the right time. Can you sense what's around us? Fex asked. Ham closed its eyes, allowing it to concentrate. I think some beasts are surrounding us, Ham replied. We know that, Fex shouted. We wanted to know how many and how strong. If you aren't going to help, then you were better off on my ear as a fashion accessory. Ham responded to the complaints by pulling out its fairly large and fat tongue. This place is disturbing the flow of my powers. Ham then started to look around where they were. Wait, are we back home? You are useless, Fex said. While in the earring, Ham was able to see everything that was going outside. As long as he was paying attention and him saying this made it clear that he wasn't. While the two of them were busy arguing, the creatures that were busy growling away at them from the dark and behind the crumbled buildings revealed themselves. The two boys were surrounded by what looked like strange dog-like creatures. There were more than 20, and possibly even more in hiding. The dogs had no fur, but displayed a slight tint of red on their skin. Their tongues were out, dangling from their mouth, a bit longer than regular dogs and a little pointed. However, the most creepy thing about them was that they didn't have eyes. The long tongue with their teeth showing, but nothing where their eyes were meant to be, was quite the frightening sight. Inspect. Although Ham was unable to give them the information they wanted, the same couldn't be said for Quinn. Basic tier beast, furry hound, a beast who is blind but has sensitive hearing. It can locate its enemy's position even with the quietest of footsteps. It will often use its long tongue for attacks. The tongue is stronger than most. Seeing this information put a smile on Quinn's face. If it was an intermediate tier beast or higher, Quinn didn't know what to do. Now he only had one thought on its mind. It's grinding time. Now unafraid of the beasts, Quinn wanted to get a kill before Fex, just in case no one had the beast before. Immediately, Quinn lifted his leg, ready to perform the crescent roundhouse blood kick. Wait, Quinn! We don't know how strong they are yet. It might be best if we just run, Fex shouted out, but it was too late. Quinn had finished his motion, and the attack had already left his leg. The distance between him and the beast wasn't great, but Quinn chose to use the blood kick to try to finish the beast in one strike. Hearing the attack through the air, the dog prepared to jump away, but it was too slow, and as it turned, its body was sliced in half. 10 EXP gained. First time killing beast, furry hound, 100 bonus EXP gained. 2640 of 3200 XP. Quinn had received the bonus points for killing a new creature, but he did not obtain any more bonus points. It was expected, since the beast was in some type of establishment. They likely had contact with something else that had before. Thinking about this, he felt lucky that he even got the first bonus on the rock beast above ground. Seeing how easy Quinn dealt with the beast, Fex decided to step it up a gear as well. Ham above! Fex shouted, and immediately Ham flew up in the sky. Fex then leapt in the air and attached one of his strings to the ring around Ham's nose. As Ham rose into the air, so did Fex, and now he could see the hounds in the area below. Have you gained some weight? You haven't just been pigging out, have you? Ham complained as he struggled to lift the young master. Shut up, you've just gotten weaker. From above, Fex was easily able to see his targets. As he detached himself and started swirling down, he precisely knew where to throw out his pieces of string. Hard-earn. As the strings fell, power surging through him left his body and was inserted into the strings, now making them just as hard and sharp as a sword. When Fex landed, the strings went down with him, slicing the hounds to pieces. 5 of the hounds were in an instant. Quinn continued to battle it out with the hounds. While doing so, he was cautious about using his blood abilities. They were underground, and there was no telling when they would get out of here. He didn't want a similar situation happening like last time. So instead, Quinn stuck to the basics, attacking with both the basic vampire and human martial arts. His stats that entered into strength and his immediate tier equipment was enough to allow him to easily deal with the beasts. One of the dogs swung its head out, wrapping its tongue around Quinn's gauntlet. It tried to pull using its strength, but when Quinn didn't move an inch, the dog looked slightly confused. Then he pulled his arm with all his might, and the dog's tongue was completely dislodged from its mouth. The sight looked cruel, but they had been the first to attack. Finally, all the hounds in the area were defeated. Fex had defeated 15 of them, while Quinn had 8. There seemed to be more, but after seeing many of their kind defeated, they quickly rushed off. Comparing the two numbers, Quinn could tell that he still wasn't quite at Fex level, but with improvements in his shadow ability and others, he could tell he wasn't far off. 2720 of 3200 EXP. After defeating the dogs, Quinn decided to collect the crystals. Fex didn't look too bothered. Basic tier crystals weren't worth his time, but Quinn still thought they might come in handy in creating a weapon from the system. "Boss, you're not planning to head to that tower, are you?" Ham said as it flew up in the air. With its little hoof, it started to rub its nose. Pulling Fex up using the ring had gotten his nose a little sore. "Yeah, we wanted to find out a few things. Maybe a map or something is telling us the way out of here. Why, what's wrong?" Fex said. "I think there might be danger there," Ham replied. "I thought you said you can't sense anything down here," Fex asked, annoyed. "I can't, but something in my gut is telling me." While Ham and Fex were busy talking, a notification screen appeared directly in front of Quinn. 5 EXP shared. It was a message that he had never received before, and he found it strange that it came up while he had done nothing. Reading the message carefully made Quinn think back to what the system had mentioned. Quinn would gain EXP as long as Peter had killed something and was nearby. Without thinking about it, Peter and Sia followed Logan around while they were inside the cavern. It felt normal to be led by him. Sia didn't know why. Maybe it was the tone of his voice that shined with confidence, or perhaps because he was the only light source that she could depend on. In a way, he was her savior in more ways than the one while down here. She also still had the fear that if she left Logan's side, Pio might lash out at her any second now. She hadn't done much, but there had been several instances where she had angered him. At first, she didn't think it would be a big deal. Even though her ability was a support type, she was able to handle her own, many times against those around a similar level to her, but something about Pio frightened her. With all this going on, she is now even too afraid to ask for the torches that were placed in Pio's bag. She thought once he brought them out for himself, she could ask, but he never did. Logan continued to walk confidently, leading the way. He knew exactly where he wanted to go, as he picked one of the tunnels without checking the others. When the scanner stopped working while he was coming down here, he used his trusty memory. Hence, he is familiar with his destination now. It wasn't a hard decision for him anyway. All the tunnels on one side would lead to other rooms like this one, while all the other tunnels lead to the same place. He wore the suit, and he had even had it protecting his head while walking through the tunnel. While traveling, their group also discovered the same type of blue crystals embedded into the wall. Naturally, Logan decided to take one for research, but he already had an idea of what it was just by looking at it. Peter didn't care for it, and Sia, although interested, had a lot more concerns on her mind right now. After exiting the tunnel, they too could see the magnificent sight of the strange town, and although it came as a surprise to the other two, Logan had already expected this. It was exactly what had come up on the scanner. Before even thinking about going up and getting out of here, he needed to visit this place. How could he pass the opportunity to do some research on some Dalki architecture? The blue crystals seemed to be randomly scattered through the city. lighting up certain building and wall areas. It wasn't enough to be called a light source, but allowed Sia to see the outline of a few buildings. The one visible place was the tower that stood in the center, like a beaming torch in the middle. It had the most amount of crystal on the very top, illuminating it in the dark. No, doesn't this mean the Dalki were here before us? Sia looked like she was about to collapse onto the floor. We need help. We need to call the sergeant somehow. This looks like a whole town. What if this is an army base? Relax, Logan replied. Although my scanner doesn't work down here, when I checked from above, there didn't seem to be any type of civilization living here, although there were other things. Sia wanted to question what Logan meant by other things, but she already knew the answer and thought it would just be foolish. He was talking about beasts. Without saying anything to the others, Logan started to walk down the path onto the street. Peter also decided to follow without saying anything. The two of them walked in the middle of the street, fearlessly. While looking at their backs, Sia couldn't help but think they were crazy. However, as Logan walked away, so did the light source that was surrounding her. The darkness around started to creep in. It felt suffocating, and she couldn't help but think something was watching her. What was that? Sia thought, as she quickly turned her head towards the noise. Although she couldn't see anything, the sound of something scurrying off in a certain direction could be heard. She couldn't take it anymore and run towards Logan. After checking a few buildings, Logan concluded that there was nothing of worth from the buildings around him. However, while using his scanner from above, he could see all the building structures and things around it, but he was unable to see what was inside the tower. This, of course, made Logan even more curious. As they got closer to the tower, Logan transformed his robotic arms into 2 round blasters.
Hi, Quinn here. Wondering what happens next? If you want to jump the queue and unleash all episodes, click on the link here and install the Pocket FM app.